Welcome to Patscast. I'm Brad Whitaker. The Patriots may be having a change of heart at the quarterback position. Michael Penix Jr., a guy they've really expressed very little interest in drafting, is now suddenly visiting the Patriots with a top 30 visit. He had dinner with the Patriots brass and coaches in Foxborough on Monday evening, and on Tuesday he is having his top 30 visit just a couple days after J.J. McCarthy did the same thing. And it raises the question, are the Pats having a change of heart? Are they considering taking a quarterback later rather than sooner in the draft? Are they not as high on Drake May, Jane Daniels, or even J.J. McCarthy, who seems to be going up the draft boards every day? And it seems like the Patriots are just as interested in McCarthy as they are May. But now, perhaps, there is a little bit of debate in the Patriots front office on who they want at the quarterback position. So they're taking a good hard look at Michael Penix. And I'm glad they're doing this because I do really like Michael Penix. It's just the Patriots haven't shown much interest. Yes, they were at the Senior Bowl, so they talked to him for like 15 minutes, but that you're not going to get much out of that. They didn't interview him. They interviewed a ton of different quarterbacks. I think even Spencer Radler at the NFL Scouting Combine didn't do the same thing with Michael Penix. And then they just sent one lone front office member, college scouting director Cam Williams, to Michael Penix's pro day at the University of Washington. The rest, 8 individuals, including Elliott Wolf, Gerard Mayo, went to North Carolina to watch Drake May instead. So you just said, okay, well, they're not going to consider Penix. They're sending all of their front office to North Carolina, the coaching staff, everyone, and they're just going to take a look at Penix with one person, and maybe they're just looking at some of the other Washington players because there's a lot of really good ones that will go in this year's draft. But now Penix is in Foxborough. He's going to have those long-form conversations with the Patriots coaching staff, with the front office, and they're going to reconsider what they want to do at the quarterback position. And look, Michael Penix is a very good quarterback. I mean, he throws probably the best ball of all of these quarterbacks, including Caleb Williams, including Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and J.J. McCarthy. He probably throws the best ball, best deep ball at the very least. He's okay when it comes to the short throws. And we've seen him carry his team time and time again. Yes, he was behind a pretty good offensive line in Washington. Certainly had some good receivers. Roma Dunze, who's going to go either as the second or third receiver in this year's draft. But time and time again, Michael Penix won in big game situations, beating out Bo Nix at Oregon twice in close games, including the Pac-12 championship game. And we saw what he did in the college football playoff against Texas, where he put on a clinic and Washington put up a ton of points. But there are some red flags there, right? Certainly, and we saw it in the national championship game against Michigan. Where Michael Penix really does struggle is not on the deep passes, not on the short passes. It's the intermediate throws. In Michigan, when they had some time to scout Penix, he went up against a much better defense than going against Texas the week before in the college football playoff. Michigan exploited that. They put pressure on him, and they really made sure the only place Penix could throw was in that kind of 15 to 20, 25-yard range, and he really struggled. So, yes, he can throw it deep. He can dink and dunk it. He can throw it short. Good for a West Coast offense. But when it comes to kind of those middle-level throws, Penix struggled, as we saw in the national championship game. He's also not the most elusive in the pocket, not the most mobile. Yes, he has some speed when he needs to do it, but for the most part, he is a pocket passing quarterback, and that's what we saw the last couple seasons at the University of Washington. But perhaps the biggest red flag from Michael Penix Jr. is his long, extensive injury history. He's been playing college football for a long time, since 2018, has more experience than pretty much all of these quarterbacks except for Jane Daniels. And the only reason he doesn't have more than Jane Daniels is because he's been injured a lot. Had an ACL injury, 2018. A right sternoclavicular, if I'm pronouncing that right, joint injury in 2019. Another ACL injury in 2020, and a joint separation in his left shoulder in 2021. 4 season-ending injuries. Didn't happen at Washington, happened at Indiana University before he ultimately transferred to Washington and really separated himself as one of the best quarterbacks in college football. But to Michael Penix Jr.'s credit, he really has shown this offseason so far that he is addressing all of that and showing that he not only is he healthy, but he can compensate for some of these red flags that all the scouts are raising. We've seen him on Twitter or on X talking about how people say he's not fast, he's not a mobile quarterback, he can't move because of all these injuries. He ran a 4.51 40-yard dash at his pro day at the University of Washington, much faster than any of us expected. Go watch the video. He looks like a track star out there. And perhaps even more impressive, a 36.5-inch vertical. Doesn't look like a guy that's had 4 season-ending surgeries throughout his college career. And he has stayed healthy since he's been at the University of Washington. And he's performed as a top elite level. And I think he would be in the conversation with Drake May, Jane Daniels, Caleb Williams, and J.J. McCarthy if it weren't for these injuries. Because all these quarterbacks, none of them are perfect. They all have red flags. And if you say, all right, if you look past the injury history and you go, all right, really the only issue here is the intermediate throws, which NFL level coaches probably can correct. And he's not the most elusive and mobile in the pocket. But then when you watch the tape, you realize he didn't really have to be at the University of Washington. Then you could start seeing him moving back up the draft boards again, which I think we're starting to see happen. Now, Penix has been considered kind of a borderline first, second round quarterback. Many expect him to be available at 34th overall if the Patriots are looking for a quarterback there. But the way he seems to be moving back up the draft boards and really addressing some of these red flags, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes somewhere in the mid to late first round, which raises an interesting situation for the Patriots. If they really are not sold on Drake May or J.J. McCarthy or Jane Daniels or one of those guys is not available because Washington's probably going to take one of those quarterbacks and they don't want the other two, what do the Patriots do? They're in a situation, as we've talked about time and time again, to trade with a team like the Minnesota Vikings, who hold the 11th overall pick and the 24th overall pick in the first round. Patriots would probably want a little bit more draft compensation, probably those 2 picks in a future first rounder, maybe even more than that. And we've heard that Gerard Mayo, Elliott Wolf expect a big bag coming their way if they are, in fact, going to trade back from 3rd overall because a team really wants to draft Drake May or one of these other high-end quarterbacks. But this would put the Patriots in a really good situation because what they could potentially do, we know they have 3 major needs. Wide receiver, that big-bodied outside guy that they've been missing for many years. They need a left tackle. And, of course, they need a starting quarterback. They would have an opportunity to address all 3 of those positions if they did indeed trade back and take the 11th overall pick and the 23rd or 24th overall pick from Minnesota and address the other one at 34th overall. So you could see them potentially getting their top left tackle at 11th overall, or maybe Roma Dunze or Malik Neighbors, probably not Neighbors, but maybe one of those guys slips to 11. They could address the receiver position there. Then you get Penix at 23rd, and then you address the remaining position, whether it's a Xavier Legette or A.D. Mitchell or one of the remaining tackles early in the second round, and then you're off and running. Now, Penix, I think, would be ready to play relative to a guy like Drake May, who probably would have to sit on the bench. I think Penix could really challenge for that starting job. I think he could outperform Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi in training camp, and you're in a really good situation there. But another interesting thing that this raises is maybe the Patriots are still interested in Penix, but they don't want to trade back from 3rd overall. And maybe this brings Marvin Harrison Jr. back into the conversation. Now, we haven't heard much interest from the Patriots in Marvin Harrison. We know they interviewed him at the scouting combine. We know he is perhaps a once-in-a-generation wide receiver, has the potential to be a Pro Bowler, top 10 wide receiver immediately in the NFL. Maybe he'll be a borderline Hall of Famer in his when his career is done. And if the Patriots want to do it, they could draft Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3rd overall, and then maybe Penix slips early in the second round. They could draft him there, or maybe the Patriots could trade back into the later first round, come up and grab Penix that way, and then address tackle later on. And I think that would really be an ideal situation. Is if the Patriots are really sold on Michael Penix, he has a great top 30 visit, had a great dinner with the Pats last night, they could maybe go back to thinking about Marvin Harrison Jr. And now suddenly they have a pretty decent receiving core with Osborne, who they got from Minnesota, who's going to be a great slot guy alongside Demario Douglas. We know they got Hunter Henry. They got Austin Hooper. Kendrick Bourne, when he's out there, very reliable. You add Marvin Harrison Jr. to that mix. Michael Penix Jr. is suddenly in a decent situation with the receiving core. Maybe not the offensive line he had at Washington, but with the receiving core that Mac Jones never had his 3 seasons in New England. I don't know. I'm starting to like this idea. So it's interesting. This is a sudden interest from the Patriots looking into Michael Penix Jr. I haven't talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. much for about a month now because I basically wrote him off. As far as I know, he doesn't have a top 30 visit with the Patriots, but we didn't think Michael Penix Jr. had a top 30 visit until yesterday when this news broke. So I'd watch in the coming days. Maybe Harrison will visit Foxborough. And I think that would be a great situation. You know, the Patriots can get that elite receiver. They got him under a cheap contract for 4 seasons, could extend him for a 5th for Marvin Harrison. You don't have to overpay like they were wanting to do with a guy like Calvin Ridley, who I don't think is going to be anywhere near as good as Marvin Harrison Jr. And then you don't have to worry about the X receiver position, and you have a guy that you can rely on for many years to come. And then you give Penix a shot. I really like this idea. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think Michael Penix Jr. would be a great fit in New England? If so, if you think the Patriots should draft him, do you think they should trade back, get more draft capital, and approach it that way? Or do you think they should go after a Marvin Harrison Jr., 3rd overall? Or maybe you want them to address left tackle with a guy like Joe Alt early in the draft. Let me know in the comments below. I'm curious to hear from you. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. We'll be back the rest of the week with more Patriots coverage.